Well, as always, we do like to start as close to on time as we can. So, welcome everyone. We are honored today. We have one of our advisory board members with us, His Grace Bishop John of the Antiochian Archdiocese, and I'm going to ask him to open us in prayer today. Your Grace?
O heavenly King, Comforter, Spirit of truth, who art everywhere and fillest all things, treasury of blessings, giver of life, come and abide in us, cleanse us from every impurity, save our souls, O gracious Lord.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Community of Practice event. I'm excited to see so many of you here who were at the conference and many of you who were not. This is an open house, which means both members and non-members alike are here. We like to do these open houses a couple of times a year in order to give everyone an opportunity to experience what we offer in these online events. Just a few announcements today before we get started. First, we are excited to announce that the video recordings of the plenary speakers are already on OCAMPR's YouTube channel. We hope to get the rest of the recordings and of the papers and the workshops and the panels on our channel within the next few weeks. Watch for announcements about that. Second, new this year is that the question and answer period for each presentation will now be a benefit of OCAMPR membership and accessible in the member portal only. So if you are a member, you can log into the portal and find the complete video with the presentation and the Q&A in one video file. We decided to do this for two reasons. First, it was pointed out to us that perhaps people might feel more comfortable asking a question at the conference if they know that only fellow OCAMPR colleagues will hear it rather than the general public. Second, we want to continue to give concrete value to our members. And if you were at the conference, you know there was tremendous value in the question and A, Q&A, especially for the plenary addresses. In fact, the discussion that took place between the medical plenary and the psychology plenary after the medical plenary's presentation was a solid gold example of what OCAMPR interdisciplinary dialogue can be. Now, I say all that. The videos are not yet in the portal. They will be, again, the presentation and Q&A, they will be in the portal in the next few weeks. Right now, just the plenary presentations without the Q&A are on our YouTube channel, so you can go ahead and take a look. If you did attend the conference, please fill out your survey if you haven't already. Your feedback is really essential in helping us plan for future conferences. Last but not least, our annual membership meeting will take place on Wednesday, November 5th at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. This is a great opportunity to not only hear about OCAMPR's programs and development, but it is also your opportunity to engage in discussions about OCAMPR's future, as well as give us feedback on current programming. We will also have elections on that day. So I'd like to thank board members Dr. Ioana Popa, Dean Theophilos, and our administrative assistant, Keely Andrews, for organizing today's event. And with that, I'm really excited to introduce our speaker for today. Father Deacon Dean Theophilos is a mental health therapist at Northland Therapy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota, and brings over a decade of experience as a licensed mental health therapist and addiction counselor. He's currently enrolled at Pacifica Graduate Institute, working towards a PhD in depth psychology with specialization in Jungian psychology and archetypal studies. Dean is the psychology chairperson on our board of OCAMPR, and he's been a regular speaker at conferences, including this year. He lives with his wife, Leanne, who is also a mental health therapist, and their three sons, Theo, Maya, and Basil, and he serves as a deacon at St. George's Greek Orthodox Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I can think of no better person to offer his reflections on the conference, bringing both his professional expertise and his experience, being both a presenter and participant at this year's conference. So Deacon Dean, sorry, still getting used to that. I was even at your ordination. I'm still working on it. Please take it away.
No worries. Thank you, Randa. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Your Grace, thank you. Again, I want to spend this time with my reflections, but then also just dialogue, because one of the most beautiful things about COP, these meetings, is that we come together and discuss these amazing topics in fellowship and in love. Start with my reflection. I wanted to start looking back at this whole year, what the board's done, what we did this year, this amazing conference we did this year, and think about my thoughts that came up first, personal, but then also theoretical, the ideas that I witnessed and saw this year's conference. So when I reflected on this conference, my thoughts immediately turned to the idea, the concept that addiction is hard. It is hard for those who struggle with it. It is hard for those who serve and love them. Whether we speak of substance use disorders, compulsive behaviors of any kind, the reach of addiction is astonishing in its scope and devastating in its effects. I have this icon, the image of the prodigal son. As a marker for this. Those who suffer know this viscerally. Addiction brings people to their knees, to moments that feel like eating with the swine in the parable of the prodigal son. It is one thing to hear that story as a parable in spiritual fallenness. It's another thing entirely to meet people who have lived that moment, estranged, ashamed, desperate to find their way home. Yet even in this place of ruin, there is potential for redemption. The story of addiction is also the story of return, the story of the heart, the long walk back toward the Father's embrace. That moment, that metanoia, is never merely psychological. It unfolds across the whole person, body, mind, and soul, and relationship. As the church teaches, is an image of the resurrection itself. Addiction is also difficult for those who serve. To accompany the addicted person is to enter a space marked by biological cravings, psychological distortion, relational fragmentation, and spiritual warfare. Therapists, clergy, medical professionals, probation officers, sober house staff, and sponsors all encounter the same mystery, that healing is never one-dimensional. It must reach every layer of human existence. And the stigma surrounding addiction, both for those who suffer and those who serve, compounds those burdens. Few outside these worlds understand how complex, how multi-layered, and how exhausting that battle can be. Yet in the midst of this struggle, there is glory. There is the miracle of grace and moments of joy that bear witness to God's salvific plan. As the fathers teach, Christ entered fully into our lives. He hungered, he thirsted, he suffered, so that in him our own passions might be healed. And this truth brings us to the heart of what this year's OCAMPR conference showed us through their many, many speakers. I want to highlight the three, the psychological, the medical, and the spiritual, as they really encapsulate this multi-layered process of healing that is seen in the lives of those who today that we work with addictions, and in the wisdom of the church as seen as the church has healed many who struggle and suffer. Just to keep this multi-layered model as I reflect upon the three primary speakers. The theological speaker, Father Maximus. Father Maximus began drawing us back to the classical Christian understanding of the passions. In the ancient sense, pathos means to suffer, to undergo. Human beings created from nothing are marked by this passivity, by our vulnerability to the world, to desires, and to death. The passions are not evil in themselves, but are blameless passions, such as hunger or fatigue, which belong to our created nature. But in the fall, these natural drives become distorted. Father Maximus reminded us that Christ assumed these blameless passions voluntarily. He hungers and thirsts not by necessity, but by his will. In his voluntary passion, he transforms suffering into the very means of healing. By your passion, O Christ, we are freed from the passions. This insight reframes salvation itself. Deification is not a human achievement, it is something we undergo. The spiritual life is not an eradication of our passibility, but it's consecration. Repentance becomes the willingness to suffer truth. Love becomes the willingness to prefer the other. Stillness becomes the sanctified acceptance of our creaturely dependence. In a world obsessed with control, Father Maximus offered a countercultural anthropology. Salvation comes through rightly ordered passivity, through yielding to grace rather than grasping for mastery. In this light addiction, that disordered passivity, where desire rules the person, is not simply a moral failure, but a distortion of our deepest vocation to suffer, love rightly. Dr. Jenna Nicolaides brought decades of clinical experience with the medical plenary speech to bear on OCAMPR's central question: why do people act against their own best interest in compulsive or addictive cycles? Her answer refused reductionism. Addiction, she argued, cannot be confined to moral categories of sin, nor merely a medical diagnosis. It is a biopsychosocial spiritual disorder that touches every layer of the human person. Orthodox theology names addiction among the passions, the enslavement distortions of desires that rob freedom and fragment the soul. Modern medicine names it chronic relapsing disease involving impaired control and neurochemical dysregulation. Both agree. Addiction enslaves the will and destroys personhood. Again, multi-factor causes. Addiction does not arise in a vacuum. It is shaped by biology, genetic vulnerability, dopamine dysregulation, psychology, trauma, anxiety, depression, ADHD, social context, family systems, poverty, isolation, and spirituality. The God-shaped vacuum, as Augustine would say. Each layer must be addressed in treatment because recovery cannot occur only in one domain. Treatment and recovery. The continuum of care brings with detoxification, detoxing, stabilizing the body, but must move through rehab, therapy, and community reintegration. The 12 steps, Dr. Jenna notes, remains one of the most effective long-term frameworks because they restore communion with the self, with others, and with God. Medication-assisted treatments can save lives, require discernment. Spiritual transformation remains indispensable. Ultimately, recovery restores the nous, the eye, the soul, its rightful order. Addiction fractures relational and liturgical life, isolating the person from communion. Recovery, understood theologically, is repentance, ascetic struggle, and recommunion with God. The Church's anthropology thus provides not only diagnosis, but a roadmap to healing. And there is a synergy between how the body heals and how one grows spiritually in the process of recovery. It was remarkable to see that parallel as we saw the medical plenary talk in connection to what the Church has taught for thousands of years. And with the spiritual and with the psychological implications, we go to Father Demetrius Mauritius on his reflections on what it means to serve those on that psychological level. Father Demetrius, himself deeply familiar with both recovery and pastoral care, extended this integration further. He framed addiction as both passions and disease, a wound that enslaves the will while disfiguring the image of God within the person. Addiction, in patristic terms, is a passion that robs freedom. In medical terms, a chronic condition altering the brain circuitry, decision-making. Both speak of captivity. Healing, therefore, must address the full human spectrum, body, psyche, and spirit. Through Father Demetrius' experiences, he talked about how we have to address the biological, the psychological, especially in the context of trauma and co-occurring disorders, the addictive patterns, changing environments, and healing that spiritual wound, that lost wonder, communion, and awe, disconnection from God. Father Demetrius outlined essential stages, again, detoxing, therapy, community living, and the rediscovery of meaning through the spiritual direction in 12 steps. He affirmed that medication may stabilize, but does not redeem. True recovery involves encounter with grace. heart of Father's talk was the conviction that addiction fractures the noose. Again, that spiritual perception. Healing restores the capacity for relationship with God, with others, with oneself. In this sense, recovery is a movement of deification, a gradual restoration of the human person into communion with divine life. And throughout these three plenary speakers, the theme that came through my mind and throughout this entire conference is that addiction is not merely a social epidemic, but a spiritual and anthropological crisis. It exposes what it means to be human, to desire, to suffer, to long for God, and yet turn elsewhere. Through Father Maximus, the theological grammar was set. Through Dr. Jenna, there was an empirical map, the biopsychosocial spiritual complexity of addiction, and through Father Demetrius, offered that psychological pastoral bridge, recovery as healing of the noose through reintegration of the communion, reintegration of communion. Together, they revealed that addiction recovery at its deepest level is a form of ascetical struggle. It requires confession, surrender, community, and grace, the same movements found in the liturgical and sacramental life of the church. Every recovery story, in its small to large, mimics the paschal journey, the descent into death, the resurrection to life. And this is why, as right now, what I'm studying in Jungian psychology, the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung once observed, many who find sobriety describe it as a spiritual awakening. The sheerest transformation from bondage to freedom, from despair to gratitude, points to reality beyond materiality. Something truly transcendent occurs when recovery happens. This true 180, this divine participation with God. The church has always known this. Christ ascends into every hell, including the hell of addiction, and brings forth life. And so again, with my brief reflections on this subject, I also want to end with gratitude. Gratitude for everyone who came. Gratitude for OCAMPR that we have this organization that exists to have these conversations. To all who presented, listened, and prayed throughout this conference, clergy, clinicians, scholars, those in recovery themselves, thank you. Your presence embodies the truth that healing is communal. To those who labor daily in this field, the therapists, sponsors, nurse, priest, family members, your work is sacred. Every act of companionship, every moment of patient listening, every boundary held in love is a participation of Christ's own ministry of mercy. To those who struggle with addiction, you are not alone. The church names your suffering not as a more of failure, but as a wound Christ himself has entered. There's no depth he has not descended into. The Father still runs to meet the prodigal son. The robe and the ring are still offered. And finally, to the OCAMPR community, may we continue to hold together the wisdom of theology and the insight of science, the humility of the clinicians and the compassion of the priests, so that everyone bound by the passions may come to know freedom, spirit, and the love of God. As I started this whole reflection today with you all, addiction is hard. It is hard. But the grace of God is stronger. There's a saying in the 12-step groups, if you go to, a slogan, as they call it, by the grace of God go I. And that was very much present throughout the talks over the conference this year. As we gather together and we go forth, maybe remember that healing of the passions in ourselves, our patients, our communities is the very work of salvation unfolding in our midst. And with that, again, thank you so much on my reflection.
So for those of you who are new to Community of Practice and have not been with us before, a little bit about our process for the day. We've just enjoyed hearing Deacon Dean's presentation, and now everyone will be put into a breakout room of 2 or 3 people, and we have some questions for you to reflect on together. These community of practice events are certainly about the learning from the presentation, but they're really also about getting to know each other, be in community with each other, network, talk about ourselves and our work, and reflect on today's topic. Dean, can you read those questions for us real quick?
Yes, I can. So the three questions I have for today, which again, you can follow the questions or even discuss any questions that come to your mind in the moment right now too. But the ones I have are the the three are where have you personally witnessed, either in yourself or even in your work, in your life, that prodigal moment of addiction, descent, and return metanoia? What made these moments possible? The second question, in your experience, which layers of the biopsychosocial model of addiction is most frequently ignored or undertreated? And what are the consequences of that omission? And number three, what concrete changes could parish or ministry life realistically make that would better welcome, support, or spiritually accompany individuals in recovery without stigma or moral reductionism?
Great.
Where my mode of running the end is keep it also open. So right now in this last end of the time together with you all, you could share just what you guys discussed in the breakout groups, or share anything. If you were at the conference, your own reflections of what you saw. If you weren't at the conference, just maybe asking questions to people who were there or myself, like what even more about what was experienced or felt. But please, I love one of the beauties of these time together, just to hear everyone's just experience their lives, what they've been witnessing, and to share ideas together too. So yeah, I open the floor. If anyone wants to start, just question or just initial impressions right now. You can unmute yourself when you feel like you talk to, or raise your hand on the Zoom marker. If you know that button.
I
Peter?
didn't hear the
Yeah.
earlier part of this. I ended up, I think, with Richard and Jacqueline in a breakout session or something. So we really didn't have a great opportunity to discuss a lot of different things. But just briefly, my interest in all of this is the idea that orthodoxy and in food and physical activity and fasting has developed enough medical evidence that have been peer reviewed that I think we're at an opportunity to fuse that science with the cultural culinary traditions, if you will, with the theology in our traditions, and declare that we are looking at the whole person, mentally, spiritually, physically, to keep more people alive, and to keep them healthy, but have them do that in a community that is sustainable, if you will. And I'm not some whack job that says doctors are bad people. No, evidence science is a great gift, if you will, but it reveals God's creation. And so I don't have any argument about that. What I'm trying to figure out is, how does this wonderful tradition and way of life, if you will, can literally sort of bypass the whole healthcare reform debate, which I don't they have enough time for anymore, and right now just work with people and in their communities. And I'm working with a group that is called Farm Fresh to You, which is a group of farmers since 1976 in California that developed a business model to get seasonal fresh fruits and fresh fruit and vegetables from local farms to local people, right? Directly. There's no in between. There's no situation. And I'm thinking, how do we merge? And I'm not advocating these guys because they're just one example. There's thousands of others. But this could be a business model for communities, for churches, archdioceses, or metropolitans, to basically keep more people alive, and do it in a very wonderful and like I say, economically sustainable way. So anyway, that's where I'm trying to work towards. And if there's anybody who's interested in this, the other thing I wanted you all to know is that my background is I'm a board member, former board member of the American Institute of Cancer Research, and the World Cancer Research Fund. And our research back in the 1980s and 90s, and we're still operational, um, working with, we're a non-state member now of the World Health Organization. But our original research came from Greece. And it came, the guys were studying the monasteries. They would look at the monastery diet, weight, and physical activity behaviors, and then they would, adjust or measure that against the local population. And this is the science. So I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, is there some resonance here? And in other words, anyway, so that's basically what's motivating me is I think we're at a point where each one of our parishes, each one of our parishioners could be kept alive and healthy in a wonderful, bringing together of the theology, but also the tradition and with sustainable agriculture, if that makes any sense.
Does. Peter, thank you. Share your information in the chat. If anyone
Okay.
wants to keep talking, please. This
How
is
do
one
I-
of the beautiful things about this.
How do I do that? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, everything, please, because
What
this
do
is
you
one of the
want me
beautiful
to
things about
say?
this. You keep connecting.
Oh, okay.
Email address, please.
Okay.
This isn't because it's something we can keep talking in our member portal and in future conferences.
Well, and that's the point. I mean,
Yeah.
the evidence is all over the place, and
Yes.
and I'm sort of getting kind of irritated when I see secular commercializations that are doing it from a secular, if you will, point of view, when in fact they're missing the rich tradition, the sustainability of orthodoxy. And forget trying to convert the world. I'm just talking about fellow Orthodox at this point. What if the church fathers created the monasteries when the world went to hell during the 4th and 5th century, I think we can do that again. Well, in fact, we're doing it, but I think we should be doing it in a much more, if you will, sustainable way, right? And particularly right now, when the Medicaid cutbacks, 40 million people are no longer going to have sustainable nutrition through the SNAP programs. That's now, and it will be real by November 1st. The money has run out. There's no way to get it back. The Medicaid issue is even going to be worse because there's already 24 to 30 million people that don't have health care, but now we're going after Medicaid, the disabled, the seniors. So there is a need, is what I'm trying to get at, and I think the opportunity for Orthodoxy to solve that need is here. I'm sorry, is an opportunity. But anyway, I'll shut up.
Thanks, Peter.
I didn't mean to.
No, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Please, this is any sharing.
Um,
Hi, Eddie. Yeah.
yes, Eddie Melville, licensed mental health counselor in Florida. I think um, the thing that really is on my heart is the whole guilt and shame that comes with addiction. And I know that can be, I feel like, one of the bigger stumbling blocks for um, just fellow Orthodox in terms of getting help, in terms of being, beyond being honest about it with their priest, and being honest about it with friends in their parish, who they can trust, who can be part of that, I guess, accountability and support. Um, and I feel like that's one of the things we're working against. And I guess we're the hospital for sinners. We want people to be able to be honest and open about these things. Obviously, we're called to change. Addiction sometimes can be, a lot of people, it takes years to fully to get maintain sobriety and to and in the healing, actually, spiritual healing that would come with that, which again sometimes is attending groups, going to therapy, getting that additional help they need. And so I don't know. I just see that as kind of one of the big things that, um, and I didn't have the pleasure of attending the conference. Perhaps y'all touched on that a little bit in the presentations, but I see that as being one of the things we have to learn to slice through is, um, being a church where, hey, yes, I'm in recovery, and I have alcoholism, or I'm addicted to fill in the blank, but I'm here also to heal. And again, my experience has been mixed with that, I guess, in terms of how people. I think some people are more open to that, and I think see it more through a Christ-like lens, and there's others where it's like, oh, well, you're Orthodox, you should be above that, or it's like the reality is it's here, and it is a common struggle for many. And um, anyways, just I guess I'm not offering a solution so much as that's kind of I want to know how to better help people slice through that the guilt and shame, because I think that is some people stop there and then they never actually get the help they need.
No, thanks, Eddie. That is a huge factor to this. And it again, what speaks to the complexity here. One of the hopes too is that we've had previous conferences on the subject itself of shame, and and there will be several lectures that other speakers had this year on that subject too, because it's an ongoing thing that continues to be discussed. It's multifaceted, and there's ways to address it. Anyone can speak on that. I would say briefly that if you're interested, Eddie, there are some wonderful books on the subject of shame, especially from an Orthodox perspective, that takes it's a very fluid process. It's not a one-time deal. So the theme of that is that to approach that on that level, you have to kind of keep rolling with it, because it'll manifest an ebb and flow in the healing process. If you wanted to, I could gladly, Eddie, if you put your email in the chat, I could actually send you the book on that. So thank you. Anyone else? Probably got one, take one more thought or reflection. That's okay too. Here, as we come to the end, I'll end again, still with tremendous gratitude for everyone here who came. So sharing thoughts, I'm just beyond grateful. Again, Your Grace, thank you so much for attending. And um, the again, always the hope of these conferences is let's continue the dialogue. Let's keep talking. Because what was also the most awesome, I think one of the coolest things about the conference each year is those dialogues keep growing, which is one of the coolest parts. Whether we disagree, whether there's different perspectives, the idea is how those ideas come together and find new ways to deepen the truth of our faith and deepen ways to heal, because there's people out there who need it. Um, so, um, so as I think Dr. Randa mentioned before we go, we will have our future videos for the conference coming out. Plus, I think there'll be audio and audio versions for all the speakers that will happen throughout the rest of the year. Keep in tune to our email list. We will have a COP next coming month and for each month, let alone we're hoping the new year will bring new things on the member portal, new resources, new moments to connect. And again, have a great rest of the fall and beginning of winter.